We met in Goa, 2014. Yeah, 2014. And I got very inspired by his work because he was drawing a lot of mandalas and the whole room was full of mandalas. And then you create this beautiful thing that can rotate. Yeah. So basically, the inside becomes the outside, and the outside becomes the inside in an infinite loop through overlapping circles. So these are two overlapping circles, and you have three, and then you go around making these circles, and you create a thing called the seed of life, which is actually six circles around one, so seven. Which I just imagine you would flatten that, yeah, as a flattened shape. Well, it becomes a mandala.
We've done a lot of research into the various Hindu gods, as well as like Christian symbolism and all of that stuff. But
a dot is 0 dimension, a line is 1 dimension. When we connect two lines using perpendicular two lines, we get a 2-dimensional shape.
Where you can see now that every corner now has another vector going the W line, yeah, the time axis.
Take this is a flat screen, but if I hold it that way, you can see, we can take a photo of it, it still looks like a cube, yeah? That provides us with a very solid foundation to explore higher dimensional space. This is, an example of Maxwell's equations, right? In a way, right?
When we talk about very old civilizations, they are very much interested in geometry. We have seen that. Either it be Indians, or it be Egyptians, or it be...
And if you look at the wave functions of the hydrogen atom, they are following a geometric pattern. And that
I find a lot of similarities between the Mount Kailasha and the pyramids.
Science is only complicated because it's a mental process. But once you start to visualize these things through the art and you understand the process.
Hello everyone, welcome to AD Podcast. And today we are going to have a wonderful discussion between Scientist Arif Ali with Dr. Heike Bielek and Colin Power. Scientist Arif Ali is the author of The Ancient Theory of Everything, and he is also the author of the famous book From Newton to Now. Dr. Heike and Colin are two well-known researchers in the field of sacred geometry. Today we'll get to know how they came up with the geometric theory of the universe. Also, you are certainly going to love the discussions about higher dimensions, and the podcast is full of demonstration. So let's begin the podcast.
So hello everyone. Today with us we have very special guest, and today we are going to talk about the sacred geometry with two of our special guests, Dr. Heike Bielek and Colin Power, and they have been working on sacred geometry and trying to create a theory which they are going to well explain about in this podcast. And I know we are going to have a lot of fun, and all the viewers out there, I'll try to make it simple if things goes kind of complex for you. So yeah, welcome. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, everything is so good with a guest like you. So let's you are working on a lot of things. I see. You have been doing research on geometry and trying to connect it with the whole universe, and you are like having fun in Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah, just arrived in Mexico.
And there are a lot of things you have been working on. So I would like you to let our viewers know what you are up to, and what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, we're working on a geometric theory of the universe since about 10 years that we believe unifies the quantum world with the macrocosmos through a very particular geometric blueprint that begins with the sacred geometry pattern and expands into higher dimension using Euclidean geometry, and really finds a lot of solutions also through this kind of framework that so far hasn't been resolved, or has been quite some challenge in science. Let's say it like that.
Yeah, there's a crisis. We know that we have two big theories which are not like good with each other. So we are looking for a unified theory. Everyone, all the scientists from all around the globe are walking in their way, so that they could find some hint or some connection that could bring them together. And yeah, the geometric theory. So I would like to hear something from Colin, like what's going on with your work and how far you have reached with your research.
Yeah, so it's been a journey putting this theory together, but the premise came together quite quickly actually in India, in Goa, and we were researching for the last sort of 8 9 years since then, and actually been in Nepal and Pokhara also, getting a lot of inspiration from nature. So that's one thing. But one of the things that I think sets our theory apart is the mathematical foundations. And as we know, there's a lot of interest in the number zero, particularly in Indian culture. And so actually we've come to sort of understand that zero is a slightly different entity in mathematics than what we're accustomed to. And so that led us to a different type of geometric math. And that lays down the conceptual framework for, to us to decode the universe in a different way, a geometric method that has a mathematical foundation that's quite different from the modern axioms of mathematics. And so it starts with us solving, things like the continuum hypothesis and things like that. These are mathematical challenges. And that's something called the Riemann hypothesis, but your viewers can check that out. But those are like the major mathematical problems. And what we call fourth dimensional mathematics begins to offer a solution, but it works in a geometric structure. And so what we found was that lays a kind of numerical foundation for something called the hollow fractal universe. And so modern science is using something called complex numbers, on I numbers, they're called imaginary numbers,
Yeah.
on this complex number plane. But we're using a different kind of geometric math. And it has a kind of process and principle by which these geometries can transform. And by understanding that process, and it kind of fits together like a jigsaw puzzle. So we managed to map that to various
Okay.
processes, from light to the atom, and actually even to the galactic formations, and it kind of makes sense within the blueprint.
To the spiritual realm,
Yeah.
not to forget as well.
Yeah.
It makes
we know
also
that.
the other thing is it sheds new light on a lot of spiritual teachings, everything from the 7 days or 6 days of creation up to the Vedic story of the beginning of creation, the Vishnu that floats under the water and all of this. And so the model really is also explaining that there's this thing called the ether, and in the 1800s we didn't really get a chance to really explore what that was or how it might work.
Yeah.
It was all under a certain way of thinking, and what we call fourth dimensional thinking resolves a lot of those problems of how this ether functions.
Okay. We will go slowly and steadily. We'll try to like get deeper, but slowly, gradually. So before beginning, like we know that the galaxies, the clouds, the flowers, everything that we see, they have one thing in common, and that is fractal nature, right? So when we talk about fractal nature of universe, like fractal, I'd like to tell to my viewers that fractal means an object. Like if we take a part of an object, then the part will be same as the whole object. They'll be like in the same pattern, right? Yeah, like you can see. So
Here, this is the Sierpinski triangle, no? So every part reflects the whole, and that's the nature
whole,
of fractal universe, because you just need to know one unit, and you know that it just repeats into infinity.
So when we talk about fractal nature of the universe, I would like you to explain from like a very basic, like for someone who is very new to sacred geometry, how do you explain the fractal nature of the universe?
Well, it just means that you can repeat a process, right? Let's say you take a square. This is a square from this side. Just get it right.
Yeah.
And yeah, the square is, let's say each side is divided into two, and you can create another square inside. And you can create the side into two, and you can create another square inside, and another square inside, and another square inside. So this is a very simple process by which a shape, when divided into two, can create an infinite fractal going into infinity inwards. And that's a type of fractal. This is called the Sierpinski triangle, coming out of the chaos game. But there are other types of fractals as well. Infinities that can grow outwards and expand, infinities that can grow outwards within a boundary, infinities that can grow with all the shapes, actually. All the shapes do it, and we get different kinds of patterns and different kinds of qualities. And how this is relevant is because when we look at the atom, and we see how the shapes are present in the atom, and we understand that the universe is a fractal, well, that fractal just repeats on all the scales, from the atomic realm to the cellular to the earthly realm, how the planets are moving and spaced out, to the galactic structures themselves. So we know that there are these repeating patterns, and we just haven't put it into a fractal blueprint, and that's what we're bringing.
Okay. So, and when we are into this sacred geometry, we have a statement that we can reveal our star tetrahedron by opening up the cube of space, black cube of space. So I would request you to explain it word by word, like what the statement completely means.
I mean, you mentioned star tetrahedron. This is what's called a star tetrahedron here, yeah. And you can see it's actually, if we look at this is a tetrahedron. So you can see here that what you have is two tetrahedra that are compound in sacred geometry, yeah. And if we pull the corners off, inside, I'll just show you a little bit of that. Not going to show all of it. But you can see there's an octahedron. Yeah, like that, yeah. And so the octahedron sits inside this structure, and it nests perfectly, inside this structure with the corners on each face, tetrahedra on each face. There's 8 tetrahedra, and then this is a cube. You could say, yeah, here's the cube, and we can see that actually this will fit perfectly inside, and therefore we have a kind of a structure, a geometric structure, don't we? We have a cross that goes across here, and we have a center point, yeah, and we've got 4 corners, and then another 4 corners, and every center is defined by this. It's called its Platonic jewel, yeah. What's quite interesting is that this structure is found at all levels of sort of existence, from the structures of, compounds and atoms that combine into sort of, lattice forms that often have a cubic basis, of some description. So everything that's coming up from that atomic structure is sort of based in this.
Does this structure have any spiritual significance, like the black box and the star tetrahedron?
Well, yeah.
I mean, the star tetrahedron has been known in the Kabbalah, in the Kabbalistic teachings, as the Merkaba. So for many years, it has been used as a kind of spiritual vehicle to visualize around the body and meditate and activate it in a certain way, actually in a higher dimensional way, because you start to move it as well. And it has been said that by doing this, you're able to, transcend dimensions, getting out of this realm. Well, at least it definitely does something with you. It connects to your higher, self.
Higher dimensions, yeah. Okay,
interesting point. This is something called a cube octahedron, and it was a very special shape in sacred geometry. It's an Archimedean solid. You can see it's got square faces, and it's got kind of, there, and then it can also have like a kind of triangular.
Triangle, yeah.
So this shape here is the perfect shape to nest spheres in space, and in sort of a lot of Hindus who out there will practice Diwali, and they'll probably hang this shape.
Yeah.
In the Festival of Light, yeah. And what it does is it binds spherical spheres together, Yeah, that's what it does. But it also fits perfectly in this cube, you see. So if you combine these two concepts here, what you have is a transformation of something that is spherical into something that is a cube. And that's
Cubicle.
the tenets of sacred geometry, the transformation of the square into the circle.
So, how did you first get so attracted or inclined toward the sacred geometry? I can see some tattoo as well. We'll discuss about that as well. So, how did you get into this? Like, what was the spark?
I mean, for me, it was like because I was coming from science and I got into spirituality, and I'm an artist as well. So it kind of like brought all of these things together in such a beautiful and visual and kind of a simple way as well. I mean, it's complex. Obviously, science is complex, but at the same time, there's a new way, like mental models, how you can see something that might take years to decode, and you can actually reveal that in a very short period of time. And I found this super interesting. We met in Goa, 2014. Yeah, 2014. And I got very inspired by his work because he was drawing a lot of mandalas, and the whole room was full of mandalas. And he was telling me some stuff about numbers, and I was very intrigued.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, you talked about mandala. We in Nepal and especially in the Indian subcontinent, we find a lot of mandalas in our temples, in stupas. So, what is that? Does it mean something, or having different mandala in different temples? Are there like categories of mandala and something that they are trying to portray?
I mean, mandala means circle, and it reflects aspects of the cosmos. And that's actually the meaning behind the mandala that have been used
Okay,
for,
good.
spiritual enlightenment, meditation. But they actually represent stuff. And then I mean, these shapes are like higher dimensional shapes, but just imagine you would flatten that, yeah, as a flattened shape. Well, it becomes a mandala, a concentric kind of geometric
Okay.
design. So,
Mm.
yeah, it's just kind of like another way of looking at the universe from a kind of flat space. And each of the mandala, I mean, they usually also linked to certain concepts as well. You got symbolism, you got certain, symbols for gods and goddesses and stuff like that. And there's a lot in there. Yeah, what kind of symmetry you're using.
Yeah, and
Talking about
we've done a lot of research into the various Hindu gods, as well as like Christian symbolism and all of that stuff. But particularly in Buddhism and Hinduism, you get like you say, a lot of mandalas. Yeah,
mandalas. Yeah.
and it turns out that when you start to marry the concepts of like, for example, the eight-spoked wheel spinning on the finger of Vishnu would be one example, right? Which is often represented in Buddhism as well, the eight directions, yeah, and many other sort of religions, yeah, but particularly those. But then his consort, the Lakshmi, has a symbol which is two squares rotated, and so you can see how the two squares can fit over the wheel, and when that happens, that unification, that generates something called the silver ratio from the octagon. And that has a really
Silver.
quite profound sort of meaning in our new theory. Not just that, but it's also about like, the wheel of time, the infinite, yeah, that is spinning on the finger of Vishnu and is then by the feminine aspect, maintained in a box, in a square with this time function, we call it, of this silver ratio. And we can see that work within a fourth dimensional model of the atom. And so that, suddenly what starts to emerge is that these aren't just religious symbols, they also contain a lot of scientific knowledge. And
Yeah.
once you start to decode the universe through sort of logical principles of geometry, then everything dovetails into each other.
Okay, so to understand these things, we need to have a proper understanding of Euclidean geometry and also the higher dimensions like fourth spatial dimension. So,
Yes, and actually we're offering one of our tutors in in India. He's actually an Indian guy. Sunil has actually written a kind of synopsis, if you like, of the 10 books of Euclid.
13.
13. Well, and then and so then has then sort of summarized it, shall we say? Yeah. So we've got that on our
Okay.
website. It's a free resource, so people who want to learn about that can go to Into Infinity, and there's the guide to Euclidean geometry there. So that's free for everyone to sort of yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Because when we talk about we, like how we behave, is a lot of cultures that we follow. There are a lot of traditions that we follow. There are a lot of things that we see every day, but we never question those things. Like I have been seeing mandala like when I was a very small, like a kid, but we never ask questions about what might this mean. Like, is it a kind of signal or a kind of message from God or those kind of things? But you guys are doing it so great, and I'd love if my viewers get into your website. It's intoinfinity.com web or .com.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
IN then number 2. Yeah.
Yeah, we will. Okay, we will like put it in the description, and my viewers are going to read that book for sure. I hope. So
there's a lot. We've got a lot of free resources there, and a lot more detail for those people who like mathematics and stuff. We go into a lot of the math on that.
So, what is fourth dimension? Like we know very well what is, like a dot is 0 dimension, a line is 1 dimension. When we connect 2 lines using perpendicular 2 lines, we get a 2-dimensional shape, and then we again join two-dimensional things with some perpendicular lines, we get a 3-dimensional object. So what after that? Like we always have a question in our mind, like what might 4th dimension look like, or how can we even perceive it? And so how would you like to answer?
Okay, there's many different ways how you can approach dimensional space. Let's say we go from the cubic translation model, and this is how you described it already. You have a dot, the 0D, the dot moves in space, you get the line, and the line moves, it creates a square, and then the square moves, creates a cube, and that's like the basic stuff that we learn in school, right? This is the 3rd dimension. And then all of a sudden, we learned that 4D is time. And I don't remember that there was any shape being mentioned, but actually when you think about shapes and let's say the cubic model, it just means that every dimension is defined by another axis, by another vector, right? So the 3 dimensions and you have a cube, then each point here in a cube is defined by 3 axes. And now when we go to the 4th dimension, it just means there's another axis. But because we're in the 3-dimensional reality, it's like beyond our perception, right? But we can visualize this with this kind of geometry called the hypercube or tesseract, where you can see now that every corner now has another vector going the W line, the time axis, and it creates another cube outside. And those cubes then start to swap places. So from our 3D perception, we wouldn't actually see that, because we are 3D, right? So
we are trapped. We are trapped.
Yeah, we're trapped. No, we're not trapped. But yeah, so the 2 cube swaps, and what we perceive is actually one moment to the next, like a frame of time. So just like in the movie, you have, there's one frame, like a square, and then there's a next square and the next square. But when you watch the movie, you don't see that switch. You only see things changing. And that's exactly how we perceive the reality. We know we're here, but there's something changing, and we're changing through the moment, through time. And it's basically a 4th dimensional geometric perception of that concept via this hypercube. But this is not the only one. You can have also this one. You can also have this one. A lot of people know this as the torus. So that would be the respective version when you look at the rotational model, you could say, because you can also do the same with circles and spheres. And then you create this beautiful thing that can rotate. Yeah. So basically, the inside becomes the outside, and the outside becomes the inside in an infinite loop. Yeah. So
Okay.
that is another
Yeah.
fourth dimensional aspect, just with another shape. You could say this is like the circular form, while this is the cubic form, and they both come together to create the reality experience. Yeah, the circle and the square.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a very, very clear, like vivid explanation to fourth dimension. Yeah,
So
please.
so we can see there are models that we can use that sort of show that, yeah. And you can take a piece of paper and you can make a shadow projection of a cube of a 3D object, yeah. So you can take this. This is a flat screen, but if I hold it that way, you can see we can take a photo of it. It still looks like a cube, yeah. But it has a kind of particular type of view on it, yeah. If I hold it that way, it just looks like a square, doesn't it? Yeah. So
Square.
if I
Yeah.
pass this through a space, yeah, it would emerge like in a certain shape as I passed it through this flat
Yeah.
surface, right? So you could say that there's an image in 2D that looks a little bit like this fourth dimensional shape, and actually in 3D it's this. You see, this is called a rhombic dodecahedron, but you see, if I hold it like that, it looks kind of like a cube, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. It looks
And
like.
it suddenly changes, yeah.
So, yeah.
Right? So it's not a
Yeah.
cube, but it looks like it could be a cube, yeah. And this is called a rhombic dodecahedron, yeah. And you can see that it's almost got a part that comes out here, when I hold it like that. You can sometimes see the shadow projection of the thing like that. Or if I hold it face on, it's a bit more like that. And if I hold it that way, it looks a bit more like that, yeah. So that gives you an idea of that shape, yeah. And this represents actually the 4D hypercube. So the question is, if this is the shape, yeah, how is it constructed? And it turns out that if we go inside here, this is how it's constructed when we put it here. Can you see that? It's the
Okay.
cube that is combined with
Yeah, octahedron.
the octahedron itself, you see?
Octahedrons. Yeah.
So what we see in that, we see like a kind of model. And inside here, you can see there could be another octahedron.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's the fractal
Okay.
nature.
Okay.
So we have like a
Now we.
fractal nature, but then as that fractal nature expands, which is this blueprint here, you can see it's the similar nature, right, to this one here. Now we've got the cube that comes out of the holes, doesn't it? Yeah. So when you perform certain fractal processes, there are certain spaces that are left that can be filled with other things. And now we sort of think about dimensional space and how does it work, and what is this thing with the ether, the structure of it, So this is very important knowledge when it comes to understanding the fourth dimension.
Okay. So yeah, the ether is also a very, very interesting concept that we were holding very tightly in 90s, and suddenly we dropped it. Like we don't need ether, and now we have all the theories, all the understandings of our universe without including the concept of ether. So how what's your take on this? Like how do you explain this?
Well, I mean, it's the ether is a big concept, you could say, yeah, because it lies at the foundation of electricity. What is electricity? What is light? How does this all work? So it's really at the foundations of reality. And you could say, that when Einstein, won his, shared his Nobel Prize, it was for solving the photoelectric effect with a photon of light, so a particle.
Yeah.
And so that didn't need the ether anymore because they were wondering how can light travel through the vacuum, and if it can travel as a particle, then you don't need an ether.
Okay, so to my viewers, I'd like to give a small summary about what is ether. See, like we have when we drop a pebble on surface of water, we see wave of water, and the wave is traveling through the medium that is water. And when we talk about waves in the strings of guitar, when we pluck the string, the wave travels through string. So string is the medium. In similar way, the sound we speak, the sound wave travel through the medium that is air. And when it comes to light, if light is a wave, then it also should require a medium to travel. So and there was a time before 90s mainly, people considered ether to be the medium, which is the all pervading medium, ether. It was also called the luminiferous ether. I love this line, the luminiferous ether. So it was called ether, and so yeah, that's ether is the medium through which light or the electromagnetic radiation propagates. So, and it was dropped due to several reasons that we are going to discuss after this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the ether itself has been an elusive thing, but everyone probably has heard of E equals mc squared, the famous equation.
Yeah.
That concept of c is really what it means. The speed of light is constant. Yeah. And so what does that mean? It means that there's a kind of law of causality. There is a law of causality, or in science, relativity. Yeah. One moment feeding into the next in a kind of time-space continuum, right?
Events.
Yeah. And so the fact that the speed of light isn't infinite, it's a finite speed, sets that causality. And that is infinitely, that's tied intimately with this nature of the ether, because the speed at which this light can expand or move through this vacuum is limited by a resistive force of some description. And it's that resistive force that is actually, in a sense, the etheric field that stops light from being infinite. Yeah.
Yeah. Even we know that even Einstein, in the beginning of his physics journey, when he was in like 17 or 18, he published papers which were based on the existence of ether itself. But everyone was on that. Mainly, I'm a huge fan of Henrik Lorentz. He spent all his life after ether. So yeah.
Takare as well, a lot, and Minkowski. And you could say that those guys, formulated a lot of, the Riemann planes, the mathematics and everything like that, the concept of relativity from that perspective. Yeah, they were into those mathematical ideas as well, right? And it's interesting. We talked about fractal geometry. There's another guy called George Cantor, and he came up at about the same sort of time. But he had a very difficult time putting his fractal mathematics, which eventually was picked up and was laid down as a challenge. It became the foundations of set theory, actually. So he revolutionized mathematics. So there's this revolution in fractal geometry and science at the same time, but two different kinds of mathematical system.
So we know that we are not sure about light. Like it is a particle, it is a wave. We consider it as both, because if we consider it as wave, then there are a lot of problems that arise in our physics. And if we consider it completely to be a particle, then there are a lot of things like interference and those things which doesn't match with the property of particle. So how does this approach, the approach of geometry, how does this approach solve this problem? Have we already found the solution, or we are still after it?
I mean, if we're thinking about light and the qualities of light, we have this electromagnetic spectrum, and that's based on frequency and wavelength. Light can refract. All of these things show us really that light has these wave-like qualities. And the only reason that we think it's a particle is because we couldn't explain the ether, And once we start to put the ether back into the equation, then the question arises, do we actually need a particle? Do we need a photon? Maybe we can just go back to the pure wave-like nature of light, and that makes things easier. And effects like time going backwards, will not exist anymore, because it does only go forward in time. And so the idea is now, if we can find the ether, we can describe it in such a way that it makes sense as this kind of energy in the vacuum through which light can traverse the universe, then yeah, we have a solution to this enigma. We don't need a duality. We just need the
Yeah.
ether.
Yeah, because I believe that until we don't have a proper explanation to one thing, if we explain one thing in two different ways, then we are in confusion. We are still not to the mark. So yeah, hopefully, and let's zoom out everything and let's see the whole sacred geometry as a thing. So there might be an objective there certainly is. So if you have to point out few objectives, like these are the targets that this study is going to fulfill, then what would that be? Like few objectives of this approach. Yeah.
Let's just be clear that what we believe we have is more of a metaphysical theory, because the approach is different from the scientific approach, But what we do is we take on the concept of what has been discovered about our dimension of existence, about the atom, what has been discovered about all this stuff, and we see the geometric pattern, don't we? Yeah. But there are problems, as you say, that arise like mysteries. Yeah. And we believe we've solved a lot of those mysteries in science. Yeah. And the way that we've done that is by using fourth dimensional mathematical principles based on Euclidean geometry. And that provides us with a very solid foundation to explore higher dimensional space beyond our existence. And that's something that science has never done, because it uses a kind of, the mathematics that it uses is based on complex numbers and things like this. So what we're saying, the model that we have actually represents directly the dimensions, the dimensional geometric structure, rather than trying to model it. But out of that, there comes a number of solutions when we start to think in this fourth dimensional way. So fourth dimensional thinking is a different kind of perspective, because everything is emerging out of the ether. It's not like traveling through space. Energy is emerging out of the ether.
Okay, I remember
through this dimension and into out of this dimension. And so we have a kind of view of like an equilibrium of energy that is maintained in time within the universal structure, which becomes the volume of light within the galactic structure, etc. Yeah. So everything becomes more of a sense of this sense of it, like there's like a pore. I think Indra's net is a sort of metaphor for this sort of thing, or the flower of life tapestry. There are dots that are evenly spaced out, if you like, in the matrix, and the energy pours through those dots through dimensional space and moves through this ether, and that ether is a fourth dimensional thing. It rotates it just like the hypercube, and it renders these moments of time. And that's a very different view from the scientific view of, entropy being the driving force of time and heat death and all of that stuff, because there's a sense of like something called the arrow of time, which is you have entropy is when you have a lot of heat and then it dissipates, and that's the model of time that we have in science. It's the rate of that energy dissipating, and when it goes flat, you get this thing called universal heat death, where the universe ends, because there's no more energy to drive it. In our model, that's not the case. What we're saying is energy is emerging out of this thing, and that resolves how these complex structures, the biological structures and all of this stuff, can emerge through geometric transformation. And so complexity can then be constructed on that basis. And so that solves a lot of problems with time, the concept of time. It has some deep implications for Einstein's theory of relativity, even, and all of this stuff. And it starts to discard the nature of the particle of light and replace it with a fourth dimensional field in which we're living.
So there might be a lot of physicists who couldn't digest this concept just because we are considering ether. We are trying to bring ether back to life. Yeah. So as per the physicists, the understanding is that Michelson-Morley experiment, the experiment like led to the death of ether. This is the statement that is repeated like a lot of times. So how do you like answer this? How do you respond to this?
Well, back in the day, it was a perception of the ether, what they thought the ether is like. And it was a very 3D perception because as the Earth is going through the universe, they were thinking it's kind of like this
Wind.
matrix, the static matrix that will create this ether wind. Yeah. So like some sort of
Yeah.
disturbance because the Earth is moving through it. Yeah. Like a grid, and it's moving through it and it creates, this resistance. But that's a very three-dimensional view, because that's just one way of thinking about the ether. And so obviously when they did the experiment, there was no difference, when they started to shoot the light across. They didn't see any disruption, no ether wind. And that's why they disregard this whole concept. And Einstein came along with the photon. But if you start to understand it's actually a geometric construct that is not static, it's a dynamic construct, then this whole thing can be interpreted in a different way.
Yeah, and so you might ask, what were the problems with the ether? So we should look at that, and actually there's a definitions. So one of the facts is that it needs to be incompressible, yet at the same time act like a fluid. And that's what we find in these fourth dimensional polytopes. A cube in 3D space is a cube in 3D space, but it's incompressible.
Yeah, they create a matrix.
But it can still rotate in 4D space and flip between the cubes, rendering different moments of time. Or it can, its inside can transform to its outside. We see this in the magnetic fields and all of this stuff. This is, an example of Maxwell's equations, right? In a way, right?
Yeah. Can this theory lead us to free energy and those kind of things? Like I'm very interested now. Can this concept lead us to the free energy?
Yes. Okay, so when we talk about free energy, the experiments that we need to look at, there are two, because those are the ones that also disprove classical mechanics, if you like, all this stuff about Maxwell's equations, and introduced the quantum concept. Yeah, and that was through someone called Max Planck, who developed the Planck constant and all of this. It's quite big stuff in science, but fundamentally what it means is that energy is quantized into packets. You could say there's a simple explanation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this offers a mechanism to quantize packets of energy. You see? So there's a fourth dimensional mechanism that was never considered.
Oh, is it quantized in time?
Exactly, because this has a X, Y, and Z axis, but its W axis, its time axis, will be like going in a direction, and the cubes will swap places. One. In our dimension, all we see is a cube. Just let's say it was a red cube and a green cube. Yeah, and it would go red, green, red, green, red, green. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's how you can start to understand this concept of the ether more. From a fourth dimensional view. That it is emerging from every space around you. And in 1964, we discovered the cosmic microwave background. And we didn't discover it with satellites in the air. We discovered it by having a large antenna on the ground.
Yeah.
And it even the sound of it is
Penzias
when you have an analog TV and it's detuned and you can hear that static.
Yeah.
That is the sound of the ether, actually. It's the sound of the background, cosmic microwave background. And why we're saying the reason it's so flat is because it's a geometric structure. The energy signature is very flat. It does vary. That's true, yeah. But it provides us what we call the energy density of the vacuum, and it's fairly evenly distributed. And that is what we're suggesting. It's not a remnant of the Big Bang. It's something else,
We have already started doubting, raising questions on the Big Bang model to the discovery of Hubble's telescope already. We are discovering some galaxies which are like larger than expected. They're huge, and we have no idea how they were formed in that time. Like when we think our universe was in ionization phase, right? And we are like discovering galaxies of that age. So yeah, I'm very positive toward all the concept. I'm getting inclined slowly.
Well,
Actually,
So
there
yeah.
are some of the galaxies now, they are these structures, they follow the octahedral blueprint. This is called the Eckharton universe model, and you can see it's the octahedron. And it's the same as in the atom. And so there you have it. It's a fractal structure that you can that is
fractal.
expressed on all the layers of the reality, all the scales.
One of my friend have a tattoo of flower of life, and yeah, he has asked me to like get the whole details. What, why, how, when? Can you explain the flower of life?
Yeah. So basically, it all starts with a dot in a circle as a beginning, you could say. And
Yeah.
then that dot and circle, they just start to expand through overlapping circles. So these are two overlapping circles, and you have three. And then you go around making these circles, and you create a thing it's called the seed of life, which is actually six circles around one, so seven, which is a significant number regarding the 7 days and so on, seven colors of light, seven chakras,
Seed of
and then
yeah.
this pattern can just expand. You just create more equally overlapping circles, and the information that it contains is getting more and more because it's just spread out dots in a way, and there's different ways in how you can then connect those dots. And this is called the Metatrons cube. And actually, what we're teaching really is all encoded within this flat geometric blueprint, the Metatrons cube, because this holds the projection of the five platonic solids, which are the fundamental forms of 3D space: the octahedron, the tetrahedron, the cube we already talked about, the dodecahedron, and the icosahedron. Yeah, which are the only five shapes you can create that are regular, where all the faces are the same. So, and from these shapes, you can create the other shapes, other semi-regular shapes, where you all of a sudden have two different faces just by different sorts of transformations. So this is an octahedron, but when you divide it into three, you cut it, and then it creates a different kind of shape. So it has a square and
Yeah.
a hexagon. And so from simplicity, which is the original dot and circle, you create each stage. The more it expands, more and more complexity into higher dimensions and beyond.
So, we know that the flower of life, this pattern, has been repeatedly found in like all around the globe. Like we have found that in Egypt, we have found that in India, we have found that in like different parts of the world. So the it looks so simple, right? There are circles after circles after circles. It looks so simple and elegant, but like, oh, what are the spiritual meanings that it hides? Are there any specific those kind of things?
It's 19 circles. Yeah, you cannot not create it once you follow a certain set of rules, and it just means that all of many ancient cultures around the world had similar knowledge. Yeah, it's almost like the same sort of knowledge.
Yeah.
You find it in India, you find it in Europe, you find it, I mean, even here in South America, and we can combine that with the knowledge about ancient structures themselves, and how the pyramids um, appear everywhere. We're in Mexico now. We just saw the Chichen Itza
Pyramid.
pyramid, and yeah, they all incorporate a very intricate geometric concepts, very advanced knowledge, in fact, about
Yeah.
geometry, about architecture, about the cosmos, and it's a repeating pattern. And that just kind of points us into the direction that, yeah, they're probably way more advanced than we give them credit for. I mean, even where the pyramids are located highlights
Yeah.
a structure to the Earth itself, that the Earth has a kind of an energy grid. And yeah, they're pointing to the direction that sacred geometry stands for the fact that it's a universal blueprint. a universal design, a divine plan, so to speak, that explains how everything is connected, how everything in nature and all the patterns that we observe, how they can come out of very simple geometric concepts, shapes. And yeah, the ancients knew about it. And it also helps
Yeah.
to not only connect the dots within our mind, but also, yeah, start to understand that there is this broader perception of the reality, that there are other realms that we can, reincarnated
Explore.
probably, and then that's how it
Yeah.
relates to the religious ideas of morality and karma and God.
Yeah, like when we talk about the patterns which are like found all around the world, I sometimes feel like, is there something missing? Like, is there a missing link between we and all the ancient civilizations? Because when we talk about very old civilizations, they are very much interested in geometry. We have seen that. Either it be Indians or it be Egyptians or it be Greek. Like everywhere we see something in common, and that's geometry. Even in the remains of Pompeii, the instruments were found, like the compass and the instruments used by architects were found. So they were giving geometry like very much value, and they were like kind of preserving and like growing with it. And suddenly I feel like we have missed something, and we don't know what's the flower of life, we don't know what's the seed of life. Like there are very few people who know about this.
Yeah, I mean, one thing,
So
just to sort of mention, you're exactly correct. Those same symbols and other symbols, there's a set of geometric symbols that appear throughout the planet. And in each case, what we found is that they're actually a scientific code. So the question is, you know, um, how were those things created? And that's sort of, where does the origin of that knowledge? And so on the one hand, you could say, let's say in a conservative view, you could you could say that every culture that has studied geometry has advanced its civilization massively.
exactly.
And I think that's a fair comment. Yeah. You
Yeah.
see it in the Islamic Golden Age, you see it in the development of numbers, you see it in the development of and mathematics, you see it, in our concepts of science throughout the Greeks. The Renaissance period after the Dark Ages starts with Leonardo da Vinci and,
Johannes Kepler.
Divina Proportionale, and sort of he illustrates all the Platonic solids. Then you get the telescope emerges because that's how you bend light, isn't it, and all that stuff. So all of that
Yeah.
geometry, isn't it? And then we
Yeah.
suddenly can explore more and more of the universe. And what happened was, even in modern age, Schrodinger equations, he originally started thinking of it in terms of sacred geometry, the Platonic solids. He got interested in it. And if you look at
Okay.
the wave functions of the hydrogen atom, they are following a geometric pattern, and that's, you can decode that with geometry. And so
Is yeah.
I think what happened recently is that we started to we employ when we employed Riemann surfaces and things like that to go into the higher dimensions in the in the scientific world. It made it more difficult for us to actually produce the mathematics that would represent the Schrodinger equations. So it's very hard to compute certain things. And additionally, there's things with the atomic radius, that only make sense from a geometric perspective. And that has all sorts of implications for, quantum computing and all of that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah. Yeah, when we talk about quantum mechanics, we are still like, we don't know, we are in darkness. We are pitch dark about what is quantum mechanics, right? Like we have a lot of interpretations. Some goes with many worlds, some goes with multiverse, some are limited to what we are here. So we know that quantum mechanics is yet to be understood. We don't understand it properly. So, and we have complex number in that. When you talk about Schrodinger equation, we have the use of complex numbers, and we don't actually know the physical significance of the use of those complex numbers. Like, does our geometry explain the complex numbers in a better way?
Yeah, well, I mean, in a sense, you could say if you look at numbers, there's like, a categorization of number that is used at the foundations to establish what is mathematics. And zero, it turns out, is very ambiguous within that definition. For example, you've got, let's say I have something called an ordinal number and a cardinal number. And cardinal numbers were supposed to be counting numbers, they said. Yeah. So it's like counting is like one. If you're counting objects, then it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So not necessarily zero. Yeah. And you could say you've got ordinal numbers, which is when you say first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Yeah. And those are also don't have zero in it. The zeroth, doesn't that? Yeah. But so that was supposed, and that's not really even how numbers are characterized. They're characterized as those are just called, like integers, like whole numbers. Yeah. And then you have like, the infinite fractions, the irrational fractions, and all of this. That's another bracket. Then you've got transcendent numbers like pi and all of this stuff, which where do they come from? We don't know. And so all of this stuff leads us to a certain mathematical premises because of the way we see things. And so the final icing on the cake, if you like, was when we rotated the number line and said that's the square root of -1, which is quite a bizarre thing to do, right? If you think about it, it's quite a bizarre thing to do. Yeah. But that's how
Was it a kind?
the system is set up. So if you think about it, if there are more numbers than we're giving credit for within our number system, fourth dimensional, more types of number. Yeah. And what we do in fourth dimensional mathematics is we do simultaneous calculations within these 8 numerical spaces. And they produce results, and then we can compare those results, and we reiterate those in time. So we don't have number points on a line; we have number lines that devolve towards infinity in a certain way, and that's a different model of everything. You could say it's like fractal geometry uses reiterative calculation, and we just do that with pure number. And that leads us to a new understanding of how this atom can contain an infinite amount of energy and information. Yeah. The energy is passing through it, the information is technically infinite, right? And every tiny portion of the space can be reflected into the whole. And that can unify the whole universe in time. And so you start from that very basis, and here we are in the center of it, experiencing the flow of time at a certain rate. Yeah. So that's what we are. That's what experience is. And so now we can begin to see ourselves differently, and it's much more akin to being at the center, at the zero, and that the space is expanding around you from a 0 point. And so putting zero back in the center of yourself is one of the first steps to understanding this new theory.
Okay. That's interesting. So, talking about geometry, we usually connect the sacred geometry with the chakras. So, explain something about like chakras, how this is connected to geometry.
So chakra means wheel, right?
Oh,
And there are
okay.
7. Well, in the Vedic system, there are 7. Some people say it's different, but let's say there are 7, and they represent different energy centers of the body, different emotions, different archetypes, you could say. And they're represented as geometric symbols. Each chakra has a geometric symbol. And so what yoga is really about is about, connecting these chakras, connecting the energy flow, and enhancing the energy flow. But the chakras are actually within, they're aligned in along the vertebrates, but they're actually within this kind of field. Yeah. If you think about we're surrounded by this 4th dimensional energy field, and the chakras would be aligned here. We got the crown chakra up here and the root chakra up there. And it defines this energy system within that actually expands outwards and then collapses back in. And this is actually when we look at the outside, this is what we found in the West about the sphere of sensation, the Hermetic teachings. So they're talking about the outside, while the Vedic system and the chakras talk about the inside. And really, it's about connecting this energy field, activating this energy field, and it's a fourth dimensional field, and that's how you can elevate yourself.
And for those who are aware of the chakra system, there are some very simple shapes. If you look right at the root, at the very base, you see the square and the triangle, right? And you see that also in the Shiva lingam. For those you know about that, you lift off the lingam, and there it is, this union of the square and the triangle. Yeah. And it just so happens that in sacred geometry, that's the square, that's the triangle. It's the only shape that unifies it. It's the octahedron, right? And so that's saying something very intrinsic about the foundations of what we call space. Yeah. So there's, as I say, when you're grounding yourself into this octahedral staff, you can unify the inner chakra, this grounding, with these geometries by putting yourself in there through meditations and all of that. And that's what we do in 4D yoga, is what we call it, where you're utilizing fourth dimensional visualization in your meditations and various techniques to enhance your energetic side, to enhance that side more.
And right now you are in Mexico, and you visited to the Pyramid of Sun?
No, not yet.
We've actually only just arrived, so we're still getting settled.
But we were Chichen Itza.
But yeah, we managed to get Chichen Itza in, and we've just been hanging. It's quite a big country, as you can imagine. Yeah.
The Mexico, the Pyramid of Sun.
Yeah, we already have. Actually, we put a few posts out online about our observations at Chichen Itza, so you can probably find those on the Da Vinci School website. So davincischool.net is where we post a lot of our travel stuff. And
go to the description, guys.
Yeah.
So,
but what we do notice is when we go to the tour that they talk about geometry. Yeah. So they talk about that the Kukul clan, I don't know the name, God, was the pyramid was dedicated to. There's a face of him on the top of the pyramid, and there's actually a circle and a square. Yeah, one side has a circle and the other side has a square on his ears. Yeah, which is an interesting thing because it goes back to this idea of squaring the circle. And also they talk a lot about the Mayan calendar, the calendar of time. They talk a lot about numbers. They talk about 7, they talk about 13. This is all linked to sacred geometry in the end. And we also find this, marvelous architecture because they had really a lot of knowledge about sound as well, how shape can form sound, and all these amazing technologies. Yeah.
And in India, in China, we have Mount Kailasha. Okay, so Mount Kailasha has a shape that is very much similar to the Pyramid of Sun, where you are going to visit very soon. So I find a lot of similarities between the Mount Kailasha and the pyramids. Like, for example, the height of Mount Kailasha is like 666 meters from the sea level. It's an approximation maybe, and the height of the biggest pyramid of Cairo, it's 66 meters. It's just 26, and the distance from the pyramid of Giza and also the pyramid of Sun to the North Pole is 6666 kilometers, and the distance from Mount Kailasha to the North Pole is also 6666 kilometers. So there are a lot of like numerical similarities and the shape as well.
So I was going to say, a lot of people have got negativities around the concept of the number 6. 666 was a negative connotation to a lot of people because of its appearance as the number of the beast in the Bible. But it actually says more than that, and I'd encourage people to actually read the text, because it actually says those who are wise, let them understand, what we're saying. And so, code is not, in the West, there's a kind of polarization. This is evil and this is good, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in other cultures, particularly in Asia, the concept of, of creation and destruction, or even destruction, can be a good thing sometimes. Yeah. And that's as a sort of, I suppose, a fundamental difference you find quite often between
Yeah.
cultures.
And Mount Kailasha is also connected to like Lord Shiva. He's also known as one with six faces. He's named as Sanmukhanatha, and it means one with six faces. Six is repeating once again, and also the Lord Shiva is considered to be like he has control over his sixth chakra, the Yajna chakra. So there are a lot of six, and I feel like okay, I have something more to discover, kind of.
Yeah. Also, there's a code in Vedic mathematics to do with the number pi, and you make a circle. And if you notice, you take the number 22 divided by 7, it's a kind of close approximation to pi, and it
Yeah.
creates an infinite fraction. That's what the number 7 does. It creates this infinite fraction. And the numbers of the infinite fraction miss the 3, 6, and 9. They're missing off that fraction. So those people who like their number stuff, there's a lot of information within the decimal fractions themselves. There's a system of number. And that's one of the things, how can you work out the universe and all of that stuff? Well, it's sort of like, numbers are more than just mathematics. There is code, right, within the system. And so it's all about the limitation of number. If you've only got 6 numbers to play with, then you've only got that system. And we're playing with 10 numbers. It's another system. It's base 10. And the universe can work in different base systems, but it all still works
Exactly.
in geometry. In geometry, it's the arrangement in space of that base system, rather than we put everything on a line. But once you start to move into geometric maths, then things become positioned within space instead. Yeah.
And I remember Nikola Tesla. He has a quote: "If you understand the meaning of 3, 6, and 9, then you can decode the universe." Like it might not be like exactly, but this is what he said: 3, 6, and 9. So please explain.
Actually, I don't think that's that difficult to work out, really, because what you have is, if you set the speed of light to 3, then you could say E equals mc squared. So if you have a unit of mass, it's all like dimensionless sort of structures, and you times it by 3 squared, you get 9. So there's your 3 and your 9 already. And if you take 6 and square it, you get 36. That's a 3 and a 6. And that just happens, you could say, to be the electrical resistance of the vacuum that limits the speed of light.
Yeah, 1 over.
Epsilon.
The exact value is 1 over 36 pi. Yeah. But I mean, and if you want to go into simple terms, that's it. It's just squaring, isn't it? You squared the 6 and the 3, and you get the 9 to energy, and you square the 6, you get like
36.
3 and 6 in numerology. Goes back to 9. And that's the resistance. And so Shiva then becomes the 6, the resistance. You get Brahma 3 being at that moment the speed of light, of movement, and then you get the Vishnu as the energy 9, sort of thing. That's just like a kind of model,
and
like.
Yeah, we are close to the end of the episode, because I have a lot of questions, and I'm not going to end the video to this. I'm not going to limit it to this video, and we will certainly do some more videos on some more details, and we might go more deeper in the next videos, because we try to catch up with the surface of the whole concept. So at the end, I would like to request you to explain more about your works with the Da Vinci School of Art and the Into Infinity, so that the people, all the viewers who are, there are a lot of viewers from Nepal, so let's give them an opportunity to get connected to you and learn more new things if they are interested in geometry or sacred geometry.
Well, on the Into Infinity website, this is actually where we're putting out all of the geometric theory, all the science, all the mathematics, for free. So people can read through all of the different bits. It's a vast theory, we've been developing for like what, 8, 10 years or whatever. And that's where you can get that knowledge. We are also offering a monthly live webinars with us online if you subscribe to our Patreon account. So if people have questions, they can actually meet us live, and that's something that we can offer. On the Da Vinci School, that's a different kind of approach because we try to make it a bit different because Into Infinity is very technical, very scientific, and it might not be accessible for everyone because it's a very particular language. But on the Da Vinci School, we broke it down in such simple terms that even children can understand it. So the Da Vinci School is all about how to create these shapes, how to draw the concepts, because really what we're saying is science is only complicated because it's a mental process. But once you start to visualize these things through the art and you understand the process of how can these geometries come into existence, and just by using a simple drawing compass, like how Leonardo da Vinci did and a lot of the other guys, you create these shapes and you realize, oh, it's not that complicated, You can recreate those shapes, and then when you play with them, like playing with Lego, everything becomes quite simple. And that's what we're doing with the Da Vinci School. So you can learn different aspects about the universe, about sacred geometry, through our online courses. A lot of them are free, so people can just, sign up and start drawing. And yeah, and obviously we have a lot of events depending on where we are. I mean, we do online events, but obviously now we're in Mexico, so we'll be down here in Tulum doing some live events. We got courses, we got retreats as well, which is more of the spiritual aspect of the whole theory. Like, what does it do for you? We do talks on like how can it create new potential for future technologies that are more sustainable with the planet. I mean, that's in the end the goal here: free energy, better computing systems, transport. I mean, all of the stuff is something that can come out of that knowledge. And then obviously we got our book. I don't want to forget about that, which we published this year, which really it has all of those concepts in a kind of like compact format. The whole theory is in there. Just to give a kind of like an overview, understanding why it's a metaphysical theory, what shapes are important, how does higher dimensional geometry work, where do we find it in hardcore science and all of the most important experiments, but at the same time, how does it relate to religious philosophy, spirituality? What does it mean in terms of our life? Where do we go as a consciousness? So it's a really kind of a unified approach to the universe using the language of geometry.
I'd like Colin to explain how students can approach this vision and make it their career and grow with this.
We believe that some of the discoveries that we've made, particularly, in the mathematical side, for those people who are more inclined in that way, that there are certain discoveries that will have a profound effect on the way we even see the universe. And it's, sometimes it's difficult to, we're sitting there sort of, why has nobody seen this before? Because, we're standing here and saying, hey, look, we've got a new theory, if you like, of how all this stuff works, how the universe works, and we're probably not the first people to come up and say that, but we'd also like, the viewers to go and read and message us and get in touch with us, because at the end of it, it's about building an energy behind this thing. If we really feel like, we're really passionate about this because we know what this view does to our consciousness, the way it balances everything. A good metaphysical theory is something where you adjust that knowledge to your own understanding, and it slips into place, and it kind of irons out all of those inconsistencies that were sort of nagging away in the subconscious mind. Once you've smoothed all of that out, then actually life starts to unfold differently. And that's one of the most amazing benefits of a good metaphysical theory. You unify your spiritual and your logical processes. And what results out of that is a model which we believe can solve a lot of the problems that we're really facing. Where do we get energy and all of this stuff? How do we get it? How do we understand the biological cycles of the planet? All of this stuff. There's information, and we're putting that information out for free as much as we can, because we want to reach as many people as possible. And we encourage people to get involved with us. We've got Facebook pages, all of that stuff. And it really helps if you connect with us, because I'm sure everyone else out there will start to discover more. We're saying we were just touching the iceberg, and once there are so many more discoveries to be made. But we're pretty sure that this is what we'd say almost verging on a mathematical and scientific revolution, which sees ourselves in a fourth dimensional perspective.
That sounds so good. So, I'd like to firstly congratulate you guys. You have been doing a great job, and I would love to be a part of your journey, and let's get connected in search of the ancient theory of everything. And we are growing with our team.
Fantastic, brother. Really nice to meet you as well. And also, connect with the viewers. And if you'd like us to come back and talk about a particular subject, will be our pleasure.
Yeah, it was great meeting you. Thank you so much, Heike. Thank you, Colin.
And hopefully we'll make it back up to Nepal.
Yes, Nepal.
And, we'll be enjoying up there, because we love it. We love it.
Nepal.
Yeah.
You're planning to come to Nepal?
Everything's up.
You're welcome.
Possible. You know what I mean?
You're welcome.
Everything is possible. We've got friends there. We've got Hi to Freedom Cafe, by the way, in Pokhara. Hi. Say hi to those guys. They're really nice. And as I say, we've got other friends who are some living in Kathmandu and all of that stuff, and some mainly Pokhara actually is where we hang out. Yeah.
It means I'm expecting the two wonderful souls in Nepal very soon, and we are going to have a long all-night conversation, because I have a lot of questions still in my head, and I'll try to cover it in the coming episodes. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, brother, and have a great day. Yeah.